Welcome to the Lessons for Living television program. My name is Bill Santos. Thank you so much for watching. Well, on today's program, and I always say this, when you see us on this particular part of the set, you know we have a special guest. So I'm very excited to introduce to you our guest for this program, Derek Sloan. Derek, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Bill.
It's great to have you. Now, folks may recognize the last name Sloan because your dad, Dr. David Sloan, is a regular contributor on our program and gives us some very practical, health advice. And so we just want to let folks know that you are one of his three sons, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Guilty as charged.
And so we love having your dad on the program, and I'm excited that our schedule worked out to be able to have you on the program also. And so I'd love to just to start by having you introduce yourself to folks, and I'd like the folks to get to know a little bit about you. So, where you were born, where you grew up, and I was reading your book last night. We're going to talk about that a little bit longer, and a little bit later we'll talk about that. And so just start by telling us, sort of introducing yourself to our viewers.
Sure. I was born in Ontario in the 80s. I was born in a small town in southern Ontario called Simcoe. My family moved from there to the country when I was about 6 years old. So myself and my three brothers grew up in Waterford, so just sort of south of Brantford, Ontario. We ultimately moved to Curtis, which is just outside of Oshawa, when I was in high school. I attended a private Christian high school. My parents wanted to move to Oshawa, or the Oshawa area, so my brothers and I could attend this high school. So we went there. The name of that high school is Kingsway College. I ended up going to school for my undergraduate degree in the United States, Northern California. I came back to Canada after finishing that degree, eventually got married and sort of settled down. I ended up going back to law school here in Canada at Queen's University. And after practicing law for a period of time, I was elected as a member of Parliament in Eastern Ontario, Hastings, Lennox, and Addington, and I spent several years as a member of Parliament in serving in Ottawa.
Well, you've crammed a lot of stuff into you're a young man. You've crammed a lot of stuff in your book, and we're going to get a chance to talk about your book. And you talk about those early years living in the country, and how that was really impactful. And if I'm not misreading, how it really shaped you and taught you some lessons. What did it do for you living, in the country?
Sure. Well, a lot of, up until very recently, almost everybody in the world grew up in a rural environment.
Yes.
And there's a lot of lessons that you can learn there. Living in a rural environment is a very real experience. It's what humans have experienced for most of history. In city environments, everything is sort of there for you. But when we lived in the country, we had a lot of chores to do, and we had, to split wood for the winter and cut a lot of grass and do all kinds of things. So it was good for myself and my brothers to sort of learn the work, like a real work ethic, working with your hands and getting things done. And so I think that gave me a lot of good lessons. I live on a property very similar to the one that I grew up on right now. And I find that being able to, connect with nature and work with your hands is something that can keep you very balanced and can give your kids useful things to do. And during COVID-19, when everybody was locked down, one of the advantages of living in a rural area is my kids didn't even really notice that things were going on. They were still able to go outside and play as they were before. And so there's a lot of advantages to that.
I know you excelled in school. You did very well in school, and at some point you make reference to that, that wasn't necessarily appreciated by some of your classmates, right? and it could have made life a little bit tough for you. You want to tell us a little bit about?
Well, I mean, I grew up in an era where doing well in school wasn't considered the cool thing to do.
Right.
And so now I should say when I was at Kingsway College, that that was a little better. But
Yes.
in the public high schools
Yes.
of that time, it was not cool to be asking questions or doing well. So I tried to moderate that a little bit. My grades were still decent, but my parents were a little concerned, and so that was one of the reasons why they wanted me to go to Kingsway College. But things have changed quite a bit, I think, in our society. But in my time in going to high school, there was a lot of, there was some sort of, bullying and that kind of thing. But doing well in school was not considered, a cool thing to do.
Just full openness here. Both of my kids, both Josh and Rebecca, graduated also from Kingsway College.
Amazing.
They're graduates of Kingsway College. It's a wonderful school. If you're considering a values-laden curriculum, Christian-based curriculum, Kingsway College in Oshawa is an excellent choice. Both of my children had a very positive experience at Kingsway College. Now, I read something in your book yesterday as I was preparing that troubled me a little bit as a Leafs fan, that you grew up as a Pittsburgh Penguins fan.
That's right. The news is true. I would say my fan level is waning the last few years. But actually, one of the kids in a local school, one of the kids in my church at the time, was a big Penguins fan. And this was in the day of Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr and so on. And so it was very natural for me to kind of adopt that. And so, I was a big Penguins fan. I just got out my hockey card set the other day to pass on to my son. So he's fascinated looking through those. But hockey was a big thing for us. We had an above ground pool and also a pond on our property. Both would freeze, and so we played hours of pond hockey. Even the upper room of our barn was like a wooden floor, and so we would get our rollerblades on and spend hours just skating around and playing hockey. So we did a lot of that. My dad, of course, is a Leafs fan. We generally get along. We just, don't talk about teams too much. But
I had already made the invitation for you to be here, so I felt bad calling you and telling you I was going to not have you on the show. But no, obviously, just kidding. Your Christian upbringing was also very important to you, wasn't it?
Yeah. So my parents were very serious about their faith, and they brought us up in an environment, that reflected that. And, I thank them for that. I think that, it's very easy to sort of go with the flow and get sucked into, the general currents of society. But, there's something about, the Christian faith that, charts a straight course. And whatever there's a lot of things going on today that are different temptations than were going on when I was in school.
Yes.
But I, sort of was able to move beyond that and, charted a course for, success and values, and a lot of that comes from my upbringing. And
in fact, you met your wife, who's your wife now, at a Christian fellowship at, I think, York University, was it? Yes.
So I met my wife at a school I wasn't attending and at a club I wasn't a member of. But I attended this club once. They had a guest speaker there, a missionary from South America. And so I ended up meeting my wife there. It was another couple of years before we actually started dating, but we had that was our first encounter, and it was very, very glad to have gone that day, looking back.
Now, I was reading, is it true that your first date, you went out witnessing together?
Yeah, so at the time I was very into sort of, spreading the gospel in different ways, and I would have little, like tracts or pamphlets that I would use. But one thing that I found, and I believe is still true today, most people are very open to kind of, talking a little bit about that stuff, and particularly being offered to be prayed for.
Right.
In fact, I don't think anybody ever turned down an offer for me to pray for them. And so I would do that from time to time, and try and really, share the message. Even on the streets, it's very easy to just kind of talk to people and share some truth.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I think you're right. I think there are a lot of people suffering. I mean, my brother happens to be in the hospital right now, and you visit a hospital and you walk out of the hospital thinking, boy, I think I got problems. There's so much suffering, and we know that prayer goes a long way, and I just thought that was incredible that you would act, you'd be very active in your faith, which I think is something as Christians we sometimes have a reluctance to. We love to preach, but the living of our faith, right, is an area that sometimes we're not as open to as we probably should be.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to hear. A lot of people do want to have, someone who has a spiritual grounding speak into their life. I think a lot of people who've maybe never done that before think they have to kind of jump to are you saved?
Yes,
do you believe in Jesus?
Yes.
You don't really have to do that, but there's definitely ways that you can, bring God into the conversation and let people know that God's in control.
Yeah.
And I haven't met anybody who has jumped down my throat for bringing up God and his plans and that kind of thing. People like to hear that, whether they really believe it or not.
Yes.
They like to know. They like to see someone who does believe that.
Yes.
And so if you can be that in somebody's life, that can be a powerful thing.
As you mentioned in the intro, sort of later on in life, you went to Queen's University. You went to law school, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And your wife was studying at York University? Was she at York doing?
Yeah, so she...
then she was able to transfer.
Yes, that's right. So we kind of both... We both went back to school after we were already adults and
had you had...
Yeah, we had one child. We had one child who was, I think, 6 or so months old. And so we applied to some schools. I just wanted to apply to a school that was close. I didn't want to, uproot our family. And she applied to the school she went to undergraduate for. And so we both ended up, neither of us necessarily thought we would get in, but we both got in. And so she was actually able to transfer her acceptance from York to Queen's, which worked really well. And they happened to be on the same curriculum. And not all schools were on the same curriculum. So it was really an answer to prayer that we could, transfer to the same school and then, attend there with our families for 3 years. And we started with one kid, ended up with 3 by the time we were done a few years later. So
wow.
we did it all.
So you managed law school, raising 3 children, your wife in school also at the same time. That's...
Yes, so we did a lot. And,
not a lot of spare time.
That's right. That's right. So we I don't know if I would do it again looking forward, but we managed it, and it was a good option for us too.
You have 3 young children.
We do.
As a father raising 3 young children, what are some of the things that keep you up at night?
Well, the oldest is only 9, so I don't get kept up at night too much right now. But raising kids is a very unique experience, as anybody knows who has children. And kids are different, right? I mean, people think, whatever I'm going to be able to. My kids are going to be just like me, and I'm going to be able to, tell them what to do. Kids have different personalities. They have their own goals. They have their own agendas, and so you kind of have to work with, who your kids are. We've been homeschooling our kids for the last couple of years.
Okay.
And we've found that to be very beneficial. We had them in a Christian school at one point, and then during COVID, we had to do homeschooling anyways. And we just found it worked well with our lifestyle and so on. And so I feel like that has really given us an edge up. Even in a Christian school, we found that maybe it was just our kids were tired from all the activities, but we just found like there was a bit of an attitude, that was developing in some of our kids, and since we've started homeschooling, we've really found that to even out. So for us, the homeschooling has worked very well.
It's quite an investment in time. Right?
Yes, it's certainly challenging, and it has its own issues, and we may not do that for the remainder of their career. We don't know, but it's something that certainly works well when the kids are young. There's obviously nothing that a 9-year-old is learning in math that most adults shouldn't know or can easily grasp. So it's been something that's worked very well for us.
Now you also, and I've been mentioning your book. I should show it, and we're going to make some copies available. Glorious and Free. That's your book. As I said, I've read almost all of it, and you talk about one of the summers while you were at law school. You had a summer placement at the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, and I think you were involved in the Trinity Western University Law School Challenge. Or tell us a little bit about, what that experience sort of did for you.
Right. So I was summering at the Adventist Church. The Adventist Church intervenes, which is a sort of a legal term for meaning you're not a party in the case, but you're someone who has like an interest or can provide guidance to the court or an understanding because you're sort of come from that perspective. So this particular case infringed on religious liberty. So a lot of church groups were involved.
Okay.
The Adventist Church was one intervener.
Right.
And so I worked on drafting the document that was eventually submitted to the court as our interveners.
So give the viewers
submissions.
that may not be aware, what was sort of the crux of the issue with the Trinity Western?
Sure. So Trinity Western University is a Christian university, private Christian university in British Columbia, Canada. They have been around for decades. I think the 60s is when they started. They offer a variety of programs. In this particular case, they wanted to open a law school. So they have a teacher's college. They have a bunch of undergraduate programs. They wanted to open a law school. They have a community covenant there. It's just a nice Christian document that talks about lots of different positive things. One thing that's in that covenant, and it's been the same covenant for many decades, it says that students should not be engaging in sexual activity outside of marriage. They define marriage as the marital union between a man and a woman. This is nothing new in Christianity. That's been what Christianity's been teaching for 2,000 years. And the provincial regulator in BC didn't like it. And they said, well, that covenant is discriminatory, therefore we will not accredit your law school, even though the education that you're providing is great. There's nothing wrong with the curriculum. We don't like that community covenant. And, the interesting thing is that the exact same thing had happened to the exact same school about 15 years prior to this, or just slightly less than that. Trinity Western, at the turn of the millennium, around the end of year 2000, they wanted to open a teacher's college. They had the same community covenant. The provincial accrediting authority said, no, you cannot do this. This is discriminatory.
Not based on the academic.
Right.
But
based on this covenant and their thought that, they would be, their teachers would be discriminatory. So this case was actually taken all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada, and Trinity Western won this case. This was in 2001. So in law, there's a thing called precedent. And so typically what happens is if a court decides something on Monday,
sure,
they'll decide the same thing next week on Monday if it's a similar case.
Yes.
And so this was sort of an extreme case of precedence in the sense that it's not just a similar issue, it's the same school, the same covenant, and almost an identical issue. Now, some of the legal arguments, they tried to make it different, but it was unique in the sense that it was literally the same school,
yes,
same covenant. So a lot of us in sort of the pro-Trinity Western side thought that this would be a no-brainer.
No-brainer, yeah, of course.
This has already been decided, and it wasn't decided 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It was decided, not even 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So this case worked its way up through various courts in different parts of the country because law schools are provincially regulated, and so each province had a decision to make about whether they would, quote unquote, accept Trinity grads in their, to apply to their provincial law societies.
Right.
So several provinces said that they wouldn't, and so the court case sort of weaved its way up. It went, at the entry-level courts of appeal, and then these cases made their way into the Supreme Court of Canada. The Supreme Court decided against Trinity Western. And so this case was happening as I was in law school.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't like during a summer, it was over several years of different proceedings. Some were won, some were lost. And when I saw this decision, it really, kind of rocked me because, I saw all the sort of legal firepower that went in on our side and through other interveners. And it occurred to me, you can have, common sense, the law, really good people, really smart people, really good minds on your side. And, the courts are just sort of, I'm simplifying this a little bit, but just making it up as they go along. When the winds of culture change, they're making different decisions. And there's many other things that they've done that too as well. Assisted suicide is one of them. But I saw this, and it had already been dawning on me, but it sort of sealed the deal in a multi-year process for me that politics would be a better way to make certain changes in society. And so that really pushed me forward to seek to be involved in politics and try and make a difference that way. And that my involvement in that case was one major thing that turned me in that direction.
That was a bit of a catalyst for you to make that transition.
Yes, it was.
Well, we're running out of time, and I want to have you back next week because I want to talk specifically about your involvement with politics, because you have gotten some criticism that, well, that's not really the role for a Christian, right? That, you didn't see Jesus trying to overthrow the government, of the day. And so,
right.
Just give us, I want to talk about this specifically next week, but
yes.
So, what's your take? Give me the Cole's Notes version on.
Right. So, I believe that Christians are called to be salt and light in every area of society. So, yes, that means to be a pastor, but it also means to be a business leader and even to be involved in politics. We live in a country where God has given us the ability and the right to run our own country. We have the right to vote. We have the right to lead in our own country. And if Christians don't take up that calling or that mantle, then it means by default the ungodly and the downright wicked at times will be running our country.
Yes.
And frankly, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that politics is the only thing that's important. I think there's many things that are important. I don't think everybody should be involved in politics. But I think as Christians, we need to consider, what does good governance look like in our country? How can we make a country that actually facilitates the ability of churches and Christians to be able to do God's work? And a government or a country that is actively trying to suppress Christianity, trying to put churches and others under their thumb, that doesn't make it easier for us to feed the homeless, to care for the sick, to spread the gospel. That makes it harder. And we have a government that is actively opposed to many of the things that Christians teach and want to do. And that's a problem. And Christians need to, stand up and do what they can to promote good governance in our country.
And you would think that, as you mentioned earlier, with a bit of the winds of change, that if these freedoms for everyone are not protected and enshrined and guarded, well, the winds of change could all of a sudden tilt things in the opposite direction, right? And take freedoms away from other folks. And so, my freedom today to worship, by enshrining that, it means you will also have the freedom not to worship.
Exactly.
Does that make any sense? Yeah.
It does. And, one thing a lot of people don't understand is that the highest form of sort of democratic freedom that we see in the world today comes from a tradition that's been infused by very serious Christianity. And that's something we can talk about next time.
Yeah, I'd love
it isn't the French revolutions of the world that have brought enduring freedom. It's been the Western sort of British Christian parliamentary tradition. And that's not an accident.
Well, that's a perfect cliffhanger for next week's program. Derek, I'm glad we got a chance just to get to know you better. Next week, we're going to have you back. And I want to go into some of these areas that, you having being involved in politics, are areas of concern for you, for our country. And we'd love to have your take on that. And so thank you for being here. We're going to close our program with a word of prayer.
Excellent.
Father in heaven, we want to thank you so much that you have granted us the liberty, the freedom. It cost Jesus his life on the cross to preserve that freedom. Father, we pray for the leaders of our country. May your hand be upon them. May you bless them. May you watch over them. May you guide them. May they be humble servants and willing to receive guidance from you. Bless Derek and his family. Bless each and every viewer, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we've come to the end of another Lessons for Living television program. I want to take this opportunity to thank our special guest, Derek Sloan. Derek, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back next week as we look at some of these issues that our country is facing. And so we look forward to having you with us.
Thank you so much. Glad to be there.
Oh, my pleasure. And we want to thank you, our viewer, for being with us. I just want to remind you of a couple of things. Our website, l4ltv.com. On the website, you have access to all of our programs. You can make a donation if you feel so inclined to help us stay on the air. You can find out where we'll be appearing live. Instagram, follow me on Instagram at Santos_Bill. Every morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, I put out a small devotional video. Great way to start the day. I have friends that say to me, Bill, I start my day with my coffee and your video. And what a great way to start the day, focused on things of heaven. Follow me on Twitter, Santos_Bill. Check out our Facebook page and follow us on SoundCloud. All of the programs have an audio version that is available on SoundCloud that you can download and you can carry with you. We're practically out of time. Thanks, Derek. We look forward to having you back next week. And thank you again. We hope to see you back with us next week. God bless you. We'll see you then.